Hi, and welcome to Gender Nebulous. This is a bonus episode. We're in between Series 1 and Series 2, and Oscar wanted to come on and do a little podcast. Oscar Hoyle is the CEO of Blossom LGBT down in Surrey. Welcome, Oscar.
Hi, thanks so much for having me again, and good
Yes,
to
it's the
see
second
you.
time you've been on, isn't it? I think it was November last
Recurring
year.
guest.
November last year when we did the other podcast, and that went out on Transclusive. So this one's going to go out on both Transclusive and Gender Nebulous. So what have you been up to? Been a long time.
All busy all the time, lots of new work with Blossom. Recently a position with Trans in the City, which is very exciting.
Yeah.
Um, all sorts of elements like that, actually.
So last time you were you were director, and now you're CEO. So it sounds like you've had a promotion too.
Yeah, so since moving to CEO, but when we last spoke, Blossom was very much me or my sort of Todd working incredibly hard, and I decided that I needed people around me who could really help us with the direction. So I've just recruited a new board of 5 directors plus myself, and felt like it's probably best for me to move into a CEO position instead, so that it's my responsibility to lead the organization, but have a group of people there who really have a good head on their shoulders and know what they're doing.
Yeah, that always helps. So
I think,
yeah, go on.
I think when you do something on your own, it's a bit, it can be overwhelming and a bit very easy to get lost,
Yeah,
and sometimes lose the direction. So it's so good to have people that are there to sort of keep you on track and just nudge you every now and again and say, "Excuse me, what are you doing?"
yeah, keep you on the straight and narrow.
Yes, it's like having babysitters.
So last time we also, I think we were talking about your activism. You've been a queer activist. I hope you still are a queer activist. I hope you've not changed that idea. And you're also a plant enthusiast. So I'm hoping that both those are still in place.
We've merged them at this point. So what I do is I find anti-LGBT houses and I just grow so many house plants out the front they can't leave.
That's a good idea. I like that. Yeah. So you're still doing that one, are you? You're not been stealing any more large pink megaphones or anything.
No megaphones, not for a while, but still, coming up with ideas. I feel awful for some of the people I work with who I talk quite often to Shay Coffey, who is
Oh
the
yeah, I know Shay.
owner, CEO, something like that of Medway Pride Radio.
Yeah, yeah.
I'd be like, right, that's it. I'm going to go and do this outside the House of Parliament, or I'm going to go and do a die-in outside
Hmm.
this place. And Shay's like, hang on just a second. Let's just think about the legalities of what you want to do.
Oh, so Shay's a bit like me. When I'm doing things with Frida, we have this same conversation. Like, Frida wants to go and throw bricks and smash windows and stuff, and I'm like, yeah, okay. Can we just talk about this first? So yeah, what?
I
So
think Shay and I,
what's your kind of view on activism in that sense? I mean, we've had lots of conversations recently around what kind of activism should we be doing, and what does it involve, and should we keep it? How legal do we want it to remain? That kind of stuff.
well, I feel like we're moving towards an Ontario is the sorry, I can't talk today. We're moving towards a position where the current political environment doesn't want us to have any form of
Yeah,
activism or protest. So it's very difficult for things to remain legal in the sort of settings that we're in currently. But I personally feel that we want to be building empathy. So um, what we want really is so many people who feel empathy and compassion towards the experiences of trans and non-binary people, that actually they are willing to support us, to advocate for us, and to actually take into account our experiences when they do things like vote. And I think that when you do activism that sort of displaces the masses, I suppose, so things like blocking entire roads or sort of taking a leaf out of the environmentalist books and ruining gardens at Chelsea Flower Show, things like that. Although it gets you attention, and it doesn't win empathy and compassion. And
Yeah.
I personally, my thought is that we want people to build empathy and compassion towards trans experiences, because that's exactly what anti-trans activists are trying to do, is dehumanize us. So we need to humanize ourselves. And that's my opinion, is that although I would absolutely love to be out throwing bricks and ruining places, I feel like we can be smarter and more strategic in what we do. Although there's always a place for sort of disruptive activism. So, but for me, I'd love to do something that's been on my mind for a long time. Do you remember the magician in London who lived in a box for a month?
Yeah, who was that? I can't remember the name.
No, can
But I
I?
do know who you mean.
Always comes and goes.
Yeah.
Like something like that, where you cannot ignore it.
You can't ignore it,
so
and it's not
obvious.
It's not kind of affecting anybody else, kind of thing, I guess.
Exactly.
Their
exactly
day-to-day
that.
lives. Yeah. So more of a spectacle.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something that you can't ignore, but shows us as people.
Yeah, because some of the environmental groups, they have changed their tack, haven't they, recently? Where they were doing a lot of activism, like closing roads and disruption, and I think they've moved away from that a little. Maybe not the one that have been in the recent news, but the other organisation that was, I can't remember what it's called now, but they had a boat in the middle of London. Can't remember the name of it, but they were getting a lot of resistance from the public, so they changed tack a little bit to try and engage more with just what we were saying there, do less disruptive stuff, but improve your relationship with the public to get more support. I think it's kind of as they've matured, they've probably changed tack, realizing that they need more support to achieve the goals. I guess that's what we're facing a little bit.
I think so. I think it's difficult when you're living in a supposedly democratic society.
Borderline.
Yeah, that actually disruptive politics, anything like that, doesn't necessarily get you as far as you need to get. But what it has done is it's won them a platform that you can't deny. So, I mean, if you think back before the first Extinction Rebellion protest, I wouldn't have a clue who they were. And then all of a sudden it was like Extinction Rebellion have shut down London. And you just think...
so it was, Extinction Rebellion. And then the other one is Just Stop Oil that's in the news at the moment, yeah.
Just Stop Oil have taken up the same tactics that they did have.
I mean, there's been a lot of things on TV recently with Just Stop Oil where people throwing up the orange powder. We've seen quite a bit of that. I mean, it's not doing any harm as such, but yeah, it's disruptive. I mean, if they're going to go the same way as Extinction Rebellion, don't know. What do you think?
Well, I always have like an undying respect for anyone that's willing to put themselves at risk of prison or harm for a cause that they believe in.
Mm.
So to that extent, I still have massive respect for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Personally, I don't necessarily agree with the way that they're currently doing it. But I also don't want to fall into respectability politics where it's like, oh, mustn't do this because we mustn't upset people, because actually we should be upsetting people. Because I think if your activism doesn't make people feel uncomfortable, then you're probably doing it wrong.
Yeah. So what's the point of activism if no one gets upset? So.
Yeah. So it's about finding that middle ground, I think, where, actually I struggle to see what throwing orange powder all over a Chelsea flower garden show that's about sustainability would.
Well, it gets attention. It gets attention. It gets in the media. I think that's why it's done. But there might be better ways, I think. But I think what we've been trying, myself and Frida, what we've been trying to understand is, well, what can we do as trans and non-binary people in that activism world where we can do things that are, the most effective things to do that get the best results. I mean, what are those things? I think that's the thing that we struggle with at times.
I'm not always sure the answer of that. But one of the best pieces of advice that I actually got in the last year was from another trans activist who was like, you just have to consistently ask yourself the question, and what next? So you're going to go and disrupt a garden flower show, and what comes after that? How do you, you've got this attention, which is great because they've got the attention they want, but then what? And I think sometimes that's what's missing in a lot of politics is maybe we need to worry less about how we make the noise, but then what we do once we've got the attention. So, and that's quite a difficult thing to do because let's face it, if you get a trans person on the telly, you're not going to be treated very well.
No, we've seen this many times. I mean, I was watching the gender wars thing last night on TV. Yeah, not exactly an enjoyable thing to watch. It really came across as the Kathleen Stock rehabilitation documentary, very similar to the podcast that was done for J.K. Rowling, which was the witch trials of J.K. Rowling. That was same thing. It was a rehab podcast for her. So yeah, there were some trans people in Gender Wars, such as Professor Stephen Whittle and others, and when they were invited on, they weren't told what it was going to be called Gender Wars. It had a completely different title. They weren't even told that Kathleen Stock was going to be in it, so they were really duped into doing it. And I think a lot of the stuff they had said was not used. It was excluded from the final cut. So it was really kind of, let's use these trans people to, put this documentary together to promote and rehab Kathleen Stock. And it really comes across badly. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but what were your thoughts on that? It's been all over the news recently.
I struggle because Kathleen Stock has always been known as anti-trans.
Yeah.
I grew up I grew up between Surrey and Sussex. I spent a lot of time in Brighton, which is where she was sort of, her last academic placement was. And it was well known that she was anti-trans. It wasn't like something that just appeared. I know students that she was the lecturer for or knew her. I don't know exactly how they knew her. That would be like, well, this isn't new. It's not new. It's just that people finally got to the point where enough was enough. And actually, if that many students are feeling put out, upset, hurt, damaged, then I personally feel like, well, then maybe she shouldn't be involved in a university.
Yeah.
Because I was chatting to a university, and I won't name them, but recently, and we were saying that, actually, surely the priority should be on the students of the university, because the university is their primary focus of the university is for its students. So why aren't the students being listened to, and why are the students being made to feel uncomfortable? Aspects like that. So I didn't watch it purely because I can't. She makes my skin crawl.
No,
I shouldn't say that. But I think it's so that there's such a level of hatred, and I can't understand why there is such a level of hatred in her case, and whether you pretend that it's academic freedom or whether you pretend that you have genuine concerns.
Well, I mean that's kind of what it's kind of the focus of the program was on. It was around, like, free speech, and this is my opinion. I'm not transphobic and all this kind of stuff. But what I think what these people forget is that, okay, yeah, free speech, but what about the consequences of what you're saying? They tend to ignore that completely. Doing a debate, was it in the Oxford debating, whatever? I've never been to Oxford. I don't know. But it's just, some of the language they use is just horrendous to listen to. The way they talk about us, the way they put trans people down, the way they talk about us like we're not human in a way. It's like how they get away with it. I don't know. If you were to do that with any other group, can you imagine the reaction?
Well, exactly. And I think, yes, you have free speech, but free speech doesn't trump the Equalities Act. It doesn't trump other people's civil liberties. Like, actually, free speech doesn't mean freedom from consequence, like you just said, but it also doesn't mean that you don't have to apply to the law. And law is there above all to protect others. And actually, the Equality Act makes it very clear that there are protected characteristics, one of which is gender reassignment, which is protected, and that once somebody has started to transition, it doesn't specify where that point is. It just says that somebody is covered by gender reassignment when they have started transitioning, that for all intents and purposes, they should be protected against discrimination and harassment. And that doesn't mean that you then have the free speech to say, well, I just don't agree with that. That your opinion doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Not to sound like a right-wing podcaster, but facts don't care about your own opinions. And the facts are, it's a legislative protection. So, free speech, fine, but it doesn't mean that you can't then have consequences for breaking the law.
Or harassing people with your free speech, or making their lives miserable with your free speech, etc. You've got Julie Bindel and Kathleen Stock in that program, and they're all they kind of keep going on about biological sex and how trans women are men and all this kind of stuff. Totally ignoring the fact that trans people are fully aware of their biology. We do know where we came from, how we were, what we were when we were born. We're fully aware of that. The fact is that we identify differently to our, sex that we had at birth. I mean, that's one of the things about being trans. It's a kind of it's a lifetime battle against that. And you do what you can, to change your physical aspects, and you live your life the way that makes you comfortable. But they totally kind of ignore that. And it's just about biology and nothing else. I mean, it's totally bizarre point of view from what I can see. They're just blind to the reality beyond that.
There's so many parts of us that isn't built by our biology.
Yeah.
There's so much, if you just judged biology, I'm exactly the same as about 100 other people. But actually, there are elements of my personality, how I talk, how I present myself, what I believe in, that make me completely different. And I guarantee that they probably don't want to be lumped in with all women, so because that in itself would be sexist. So it's a bizarre narrative to take, and I think that's kind of the whole problem with not the whole problem, but part of the problem with the gender critical narrative is that it's anti-feminist.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
It says all women are the same, and all women have to be able to carry children, things like that. And
it's all reduced down to biological essentialism, and that's it. There's nothing else to it.
Exactly. And I have a friend in the US who, due to the abortion bans, decided that she would, oh gosh, what's the surgery called where you have your ovaries removed? It's completely gone.
Anyway.
But
that's
anyway, is no longer able to carry children. Does that mean that she's not a woman anymore? Because she made a decision to have that because she's been legislated against to the point where she feels like it would be safer for her to not be able to have children rather than run the risk of having to have an abortion illegally. That doesn't make her not a woman anymore. And again, that's something that
it's as though, according to some of the gender crits, if you were to remove all the biological aspects that make you whatever sex you are, If you were just a head on a stick, with no body below your neck, I mean, what sex are you then?
Yeah. Oh, drives me around the bend, and I feel like, how do you reason with unreason? Something that I learned very early, actually, in my first job in customer services, is you can't reason with unreason. So
yeah, you can't argue with stupid.
So when you have an unreasonable, unjustified, unqualified person trying to argue that your gender identity isn't correct, well, it's quite difficult to reason with them because they're not approaching you from a point of logical reason.
I mean, surely it's up to the individual to decide what gender they are based on, what they think about themselves and how they fit into the community in which they live. I mean, it's nobody else's business at the end of the day, is it? No, it's just nonsense. Yeah, so I mean that was the Gender Wars show. I wouldn't really advise it. I mean, you can watch it if you want to, but
stick on Drag Race,
Yeah, there's so much better things to watch on TV. Something that we spoke about last time when you were on was Lisa. I was going to say Lisa Stansfield there, but it wasn't. It was Lisa Townsend, the police commissioner in Surrey. So I think at the time you'd put in a freedom of information request, hadn't you? Did anything come of that in the end? Did anything get resolved? Because I know afterwards Frida had done an interview where Lisa Townsend was on it. I think it was on I think it was Dan Wooten. I can't remember now, but I mean that was a bit feisty. Did anything come from your FOI and what was going on?
No, not
Nothing.
really. Nothing. I learned a valuable lesson in this, which is don't rely on the media to help.
Yeah.
So I didn't get anywhere really, so I decided to take it to sort of regional media, and more or less I gave them, this is what I have, and I guess similarly to what we were just talking about, it was more a rehab piece for her. So the article title wasn't "Sorry PCC accused of blah blah blah" or emails released prove or show that sorry PCC blah blah blah. It was Lisa Townsend denies being transphobic, with a picture of her, and the majority of the article being her response to what I had sort of said, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because at the time it was all about police doing searches, wasn't it? Police searches, trans police doing searches. I think that was the topic at the time. It's all gone. I mean, it's since then it's all gone completely quiet. You never hear about it anymore. I'm just wondering how long Lisa Townsend's got in that position now. Can't be much longer, can it? Because is it 4-year periods, or is it 2
runs
year
for
periods?
4 years?
4 years,
yeah. I don't think we've seen the last of her.
Probably not.
I think you're talking about Surrey. So, actually, I say that our last election, Woking has been a Conservative town for the last 25 years. And this is the first time since that it's fallen into control of the Liberal Democrats. So
the most recent election, it's changed over, has it? At the local elections we just had.
Yeah. So the last 2 local elections, the Conservatives have lost every seat.
Good.
More or less. So it might well be, come the next election, that we don't see her as another term of the Police and Crimes Commissioner. But I have this feeling that, that for her, she's really, and say what you want, she's clearly very press minded, very good at PR, very good at public relations, very good at getting spotlight. So I just can't see that she would want to now go back into working a job that's not politically focused. So
stay in the limelight. It was very strange because there wasn't any real reason for any of that to be in the news at the time, because nothing had actually happened with regarding police and searches. It just felt like it was, okay, what's next on my list of transphobic things to do? And it was, let's talk about this issue because nothing happened. I mean, Frida made a really good point when she was in that interview about Lisa Townsend is looking the wrong way. You shouldn't be looking at what trans women police officers are doing. You should be focusing on the fact that, women are being attacked by the police. You're looking the wrong way was the point that was made in that interview.
But the most recent report from the Met, I mean, it speaks volumes, doesn't it? Actually, there's almost no mention of trans people in it at all. But what is very, very clear is a culture of racism and misogyny and
Exactly.
homophobia within the Met. And
Yeah,
I don't want to
focus on
say
that.
all police forces. I don't want to say all police forces are the same, but let's face it, they all come from the same background in terms of the forces generally all come from the same culture. They've all been run the same way. Now, I touch wood and hope that Surrey Police isn't the same. I work with some truly amazing people within the force, but if it's that bad in the Met, and I can hop on a train in 20 minutes, less than 20 minutes from Surrey, and be in the same place as the Met, there's got to be overlap. And
Yeah.
maybe we should be focusing on that and making sure that Surrey residents are safe from actual issues that are proven in facts,
Mm.
rather than focusing on the big scary trans person.
Yeah, the big scary trans person, the story that they've blown up out of all proportion, there's no actual evidence of anything and there's no actual case. They focus all their attention on that, and then meanwhile all the other stuff, the misogyny, they'll just ignore it. I mean, it's like, what are you doing? It's focus on the stuff that you need to and get your priorities right.
Well, that, and then you look, and both Surrey and the Met have said that they're going to spend less time responding to mental health calls. And it's like, why are we focusing on mental health again? Like, actually,
What is
let's
this? I
focus
mean,
on
it's
the
like
real
distraction
problems.
politics, isn't it? Let's cause a fire over here so you don't talk about this issue over here.
Yeah, it's time for people to forget about this awful report now. So let's just cause up some other fuss.
Yeah.
That, I mean, the mental health situation is a whole other cat of fish, I suppose. But it's kind of just shows that it's just one fire after another, really. And I think that hopefully, maybe the current situations will mean that trans people might get arrested, but
Oh, yeah. Could do with one.
we'll see. We'll see.
So what things have you been getting up to with Blossom then? I know you've been working on a 2023 to 25 strategy, and I have a copy of it opened on my screen here. I have to admit I've not been through it all with a fine tooth comb. So, do you want to talk about that? Just explain what you've been doing with that.
Yeah, so for the last 4 years, I suppose, Blossom has been a passion project, and it's just kind of been something that I've just done for the love of doing it. But I feel like Blossom needs to become one of the big names. So in launching this first 5 year strategy, my goal is that when people think of gendered intelligence, mermaids, just like our Stonewall, transaxial, transincity, they also think of Blossom. That's kind of the position that I want us to be in as an organization. And I want to see Blossom taking over Southeast England. That's ambitious,
Yeah,
like
well, nothing
really
wrong with ambition.
ambitious. But I felt as if to do that and to get us to a place where Blossom can really be what it needs to be, it needed some sort of clear directional strategy so that everyone who's involved can sing from the same hymn sheet. And I'm really excited about this strategy because it's taking us from let's just do some art workshops, let's just do a social space, into really having a really clear vision, a message, an idea of what we're here for. So Blossom's kind of overall goal for the next 5 years is to empower queer young adults. And that our vision is that we'll create environments where LGBT young adults can succeed in all aspects of their social and professional lives. And that means that we are launching things like mentoring for LGBT young adults that aren't in education, employment, or training, through to schemes to develop artists to pursue creative practices, aspects like that. So it's really exciting.
There's some really kind of diverse things there that you're planning on. I mean, just on page 2 of the strategy, there's something that caught my eye there, and I'll just read it out. It says, amongst other things, I'm particularly keen to focus on engaging more with Black, Asian, Middle Eastern, and other minority ethnic communities in the years to come. So, can you just expand on that one a little bit as well?
Yeah, so it's a real common problem in charities is charities become white, and
Yeah.
then the people who are running the charities only think about the problems that affect white people.
So, I
And
mean,
for
I'm not having to go at middle class white people, but they seem to be the ones who, like to be in charge of charities, should we say?
Yeah, absolutely. And there are bona fide reasons behind that.
Mm.
There are so many additional barriers to marginalized people to volunteer. If you think about all of the barriers that you have getting into work, is someone who has significant barriers getting into work and then going to choose to volunteer for free? Probably not. Um, so all not for profit is set up really to disadvantage marginalized people. And something that I think is really important is that in the services that we deliver, as well as the volunteers, as well as any future employment, is that Blossom is a honest reflection of the community, LGBTQ plus community. And something that makes the LGBTQ plus community so beautiful is that we have people from different races and ethnicities and backgrounds. We have people with different access needs. And that's why that's in there, because it's such a huge and important part of the work that I want to do, is to make sure that the people that we're working with are not just white, middle class, able bodied
Yeah.
people. So, and through strategic monitoring of our service users, it's become really clear to me that actually we have loads of people that experience neurodiversity, people with access needs, people from different countries, but we are lacking on that sort of Black, Asian, Middle Eastern representation. So it's something that's really key as part of our diversity and inclusion focus, is to make sure that we're engaging with that community as well.
So, under the heading of Why Blossom Matters, I'm just going to read out a few of
Mm.
the headers there. Um, there's been a 271% increase in hate-motivated crimes since 2012. That increased to 1,300% for crimes towards trans people. Since 2015, the UK has dropped from 1st to 17th place on the International LGBTI Association's benchmark of laws and attitudes towards LGBTQ plus people. 85% of the public will be supportive if a close member came out as lesbian, gay or bi. 71% will be supportive if they came out as trans or non-binary. And then whilst working, almost 6% of LGBTQ plus people who have left a job in the last year did so as a result of feeling excluded due to their identity. So there's some pretty stark stats there. I guess that's one of the reasons why you're doing this, to try and make a change, make a difference in those areas.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's, to us, the solutions are obvious because we have the lived experience, which is why it's almost a interesting space to be working within. And the statistics make for really hard reading as a queer person.
I mean, I only read
as
out
a
about
binary person.
less than a quarter of them. There was a whole page of them.
Yeah, yeah, and they make for hard reading, and they really drive home that whilst some of our community may feel that they've got everything that they need, there's a huge group of us that have been left behind.
Yeah.
And this kind of the rationale behind the statistics is that it shows that when we are empowered to succeed, when we're empowered without facing discrimination in the workplace, at home, that we can achieve really amazing things. But there's a lot of work to do to get there. And that's what the statistics is to help us to understand that fundamentally we have a really long way to go, but there is hope. The third stat you read out about 85% of the public being supportive of a close family member if they came
Mm.
out as gay, lesbian, or bi.
Mm-hmm.
What that actually does is it speaks to the fact that while a lot of us have awful workplace experiences, that actually people are supportive. So we're not having to go out and change heart and minds in a lot of the work that we're doing. We're going out to show people how to be supportive and how to do the right thing and how to support someone if they meet that 15% that don't support their family members. So it really helps us set a clear direction for the work.
Yeah, and how do those figures kind of compare to what goes on online? Because, from my personal experience, the stuff online tends to be 100 times worse than what goes on in real life. I've had a lot of good family support, good work support. It's only really online where we get these awful, attacks politically through the media online. I mean, it doesn't really affect day-to-day experience so much, although that might be changing negatively.
Yeah, I think that's because the internet isn't reality. The internet is what has paid the most to be SEO optimized, what appeals most to the algorithm. And actually, if you look at TikTok or Facebook, Twitter, their algorithms are set up to get negative attention. So it's more to do with the amount of engagements they get per tweet rather than actually whether the content is good or high quality. So there's something called rage farming, which is really popular at the moment, which is where websites that mass produce content go for content that they know is going to annoy people and upset people. And I think that is why the internet seems so hostile, is because it gets people
it
angry,
feeds you the conveyor belt of hate, doesn't it? Yeah.
And then the algorithm picks up on it, because I can tell you, if I turn around and tweeted today that I had a really lovely coffee in the middle of Cornwall in the sun, probably going to get one like. But if I turn around and said something incredibly outrageous that was awful, it probably get 100.
Yeah. So are you kind of reviewing all the services that you provide, and do you just want to go through what those are, or what you're kind of planning to do?
Yeah. So part of what we wanted to do is make sure that the work that we offer is right for the community and that they need it. So what we decided is we were going to split our work up into pillars. So fundamentally, what does Blossom do? And what aspects do our services need to hit? So all of our services need to provide a social element, an upskilling element, and an element where someone can express themselves. And it also needs to provide an environment where people can blossom, because I just love puns. So
Blossom's a really good word for your organisation, isn't it? It's really kind of tells you what it's doing. It's all in one word. It's blossoming.
Exactly.
It's blossoming.
It's making people blossom. So, and that's important because I have ADHD and I'm neurodiverse. So I have 1,000,001 ideas and I want to do every single one of them, and I want to do every single one of them yesterday. So this task really for us was around, actually, how do you control me so that I don't go and do
Oscar?
1,000,000 things? But how do we make sure that the things that we do put our energy into are the right ones? So what we decided to do was break up our service and look at what do we deliver and how do we sort of hone that into the right space and fit into the pillars. So we're going to be doing our social groups. So that we provide a working social group, and we've provided that for 18 to 25-year-olds since we first opened in 2018. And our decision here is that that's going to go up to 30 now. So we'll actually be providing it for 18 to 30-year-olds, because what we did is realize that there is actually no service providers when you turn 25 anymore in Surrey. So they're just going slowly, but slower and slower. So we needed to make sure that we were still supporting quote unquote young adults, but that we could push it a bit higher. And the reason why we felt that social groups were still so important is because 56% of LGBT people say they experience loneliness very often or every day. And that's terrible. And of course, loneliness might sound bad in itself, but that leads to mental health problems, self-esteem issues, risky decision making. So our social group will still remain sort of one of our fundamental services as Blossom. We'll also then be doing our employability skills and mentoring scheme. So this is a new thing for us. And the reason why we targeted this one was because 60% of graduates who are open about being LGBT in education go back in the closet when they go back to work. It's over half, which is just so high.
Yeah, that's a big number.
Yeah, and trans women are underrepresented in the workspace by 24%. So there's a lot of work here to do to get young adults into work authentically. And we know that the longer somebody is out of work or out of education, the harder it is for them to get back into work or education. So our goal is to provide an early prevention service where we'll work with people who are queer from the ages of 16 up to 30 and provide them with things such as one-on-one mentoring, but also come and spend a day finding out what it's like to be a chef, or come and spend a day finding out what it's like to work in this accountancy software company.
So have you got kind of relationships with those kind of companies that people can be paired up with that can go and do that?
We are building them slowly but slowly. So at the moment, the Music Publishing Association are interested, plus a few others who we're at very early stages of communications with. But we've got a long way to go with that at the moment. So it's not there yet. This is sort of a very early stage idea that we have that we will be launching within the 5 years, if that makes sense.
Right. So it's like you've got like short-term things and long-term targets and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I mean, that first one then, the employability skill mentoring scheme, that is under the upskilling pillar? Is that how that works?
Yeah, so that's the main pillar that it falls within, is upskilling.
Right, and then I guess the second one is corporate training and consultancy.
Yeah,
under the same thing.
Under the same one, yeah, and that it's a really nice thing for us because we're working with queer young adults every day of the year.
Yeah,
we get like an invaluable insight into what it's like to be going into work for the first time. And what this does is this allows us to actually take what our members are telling us and turn it into tangible guidance, so that when they do get into a workplace, the guidance that we can give to businesses is truly representative of their experiences. So it's quite a nice sort of way to do it. And then, but with it being user-led, it comes full circle, because that training consultancy then funds our social groups. So it's a really nice sort of full circle moment, I suppose, for that work.
So I think one of the kind of barriers toward, in finding work, especially when you're young LGBT people, is that knowledge of this company I want to go and work with. What are they like with inclusivity and diversity when it comes to LGBTQ people? I mean, how do they have policies in place? What kind of things do they have in place that make it a safe and interesting place for me to go and work? A lot of the stuff that I think trans in the city are doing in that area is really exciting and interesting, because they involve large corporations like the one I work for. I guess you're probably not doing it at that level. You're probably doing it more on a local kind of level in your area. But yeah, I mean, that whatever's can be done in that area of encouraging people into work and giving them the skills they need and reassuring them that it is a safe place to go because of XYZ. I mean, I think that's really important. It's a bit different for me because I transitioned when I was already in work, so that I didn't have that barrier. I'd already got through the door, and then I transitioned many years later. But I do worry now that if I was to change jobs, if I was to go and try and find another job outside of the company I currently work in, would I struggle because I'm trans? Mm-hmm. Would that be a barrier? And it probably would in a lot of cases. So, even for
Yeah.
somebody who's of my age, and I'm no spring chicken, I've got a lot of experience in what I do, but even I worry quite a lot about what happens if this job was to be lost or the company shut or something. What would I do next? It is a worry. It's not,
Oh yeah.
not just at the start of your career, but throughout your whole career. That's always going to be there because people change jobs. I think on average every 5 years. So that's constantly in the back of your mind. Where do I go next? How am I going to get in there? You know what I
Oh,
mean?
it's a huge concern. And I think even for me now, to be honest with you, so I'm looking to pick up some part-time jobs. Um, and I've always had my pronouns on my
Mm.
CV and say they them. And I've not been very successful in job hunting this time round, which has been a surprise because I don't want to brag, but I have a relatively impressive CV for the sort of work that I want to do. And so I've took it off my CV and all of a sudden started getting callbacks. And I don't know if it's linked or not, but it was interesting to see.
I mean, obviously, we're not the
And
only group who suffers from this kind of thing. It's probably, it feels like a form of discrimination against minorities. You know,
Mhm.
LGBT people are not the only people who suffer this, obviously, but
Oh no, no, no.
but
Some
you do see it. It is there.
I was working with a colleague recently, and she has a name that's origins is from African culture. And she was like, I don't use my real name when I apply for
Mm.
jobs. She says I use
People change their
Beth.
names. Yeah, yeah,
And I'm like, it's so sad.
it is.
I
It's
just
terrible.
I I just hate that. And I'm seeing organizations moving towards things like anonymized recruiting,
Yeah,
and I can see why.
yeah.
But I also feel like if
Like
you've
so,
got to the
you don't
point
know
where you
what
need to use,
gender somebody is. You don't know what age they are. You don't know what the first name is. Yeah, though
Mhm.
I think that kind of blind recruitment, just based on the facts of your experience, I think that's a really good move because it does take away that potential, doesn't it, to discriminate based on those things.
I think to an extent, but there's also a concern for me when I see anonymized recruitment, which is does this mean I'm walking into a really horrible culture where they've
You
got to the
don't.
point where they have to use this service because they so you can't really win
Yeah, that is
um
true too.
as, as a minoritized person looking for work. And this is why I think things like seeing organizations that have Trans in the City membership or that are Stonewall diversity champions, or even say, we work with a consultant who specializes in LGBT inclusion on their website, things like that. And that is what I look for now when I'm looking
Yeah,
for
so
work.
if you know, okay, this company works with Trans in the City, they've worked with Blossom, they've worked with Stonewall. It does give a bit of indication, doesn't it, as to can give you a bit of confidence that this probably is the right place.
Yeah, no, exactly that. It makes me feel like, do you know what? I'm going to I'm going to give them my CV and I'm going to be completely honest and open about what I do. I'm going to leave the fact that I work at Blossom LGBT rather than calling it just Blossom on my CV. Things like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So,
So I mean
yeah, that's
that's hugely important. And then the next one here is a Guardian Support Scheme. I'm not quite sure
mhm.
what that
So
one
it's
is.
not Guardians of the Galaxy. I wish it was. So um, we, for the last year, ran a parent and carers support group. So if they were parent and carers of a trans or LGBT person, they could come along to this group and meet other parents who are having similar
Oh right,
experiences and
okay.
sort of learn about how can you best support your young person. Um, and we looked around, and again, this is why developing the strategy was so powerful for us. And we were like, oh, we're like the fourth person providing this in the area. And then you also have Flag, which do an amazing job
Yeah, no,
for
they won an award, didn't they, at the
they
last year's Trans in the City event?
yeah, yeah, exactly. And they do really, really fantastic work and they specialize in supporting
Yeah,
parents and carers
families.
in
Yeah,
group settings. So I'm like, well, why are we buffering in that case? Because there are so many amazing people doing it already. But what was a gap, and what we're moving our expertise to, is that one-to-one support.
Hmm.
So what we wanted to do was develop a scheme where parents have access to a member of the Blossom team on a one-to-one basis for an hour, um, and chat through like personalized strategies, things like that for supporting their child, talk through their issues, in a setting that isn't a group setting. Because for a lot of people, a group setting is great, but for some people, a group setting is really intimidating. So that's why we decided to try this scheme. Um, it's going to be one of the only services that Blossom charges for, which charges the public for, I should say, which for us was a huge step. So, but it wouldn't be true to us to just charge a flat rate, because we like to make things complicated. So we do it by socioeconomic experiences. So if someone
Right.
says to us, I can only afford to give you £5 for a session, we'll do it. And if
Yeah,
someone
yeah,
says I can give you £50 a session, we'll do it. Because for us, it's not about making money, but we
you do need to. You
unfortunately
do
are
need
at
money though.
we're at a point where grant funders won't touch LGBT causes because it's such a hostile position. So we need
Yeah,
to start finding ways to cover our costs. So this is one of the services that will hopefully contribute to it. But because it wouldn't be true to us to just charge everyone a flat rate, we think it's really important that we still take almost like a cooperative or tiered approach to
yeah.
this work.
Hmm. And then we've got this queer arts and heritage workshops, which is in your expression pillar.
Mm,
Now that one looks really interesting. Um,
it's my favorite.
yeah, workshops focusing on growing, nurturing, and empowering local creative talent whilst building LGBTQ plus communities' pride in its own heritage. Yeah, I mean that sounds great.
Yeah, so we did a lot of work with our service users around, do you feel connected with your community's history? And do you know what? And everything I kept hearing was, yeah, the Stonewall riots. But people didn't know much beyond the Stonewall riots. So they didn't know about ACT UP or um, why the Pink Triangle, things like that. And things the thing is that queer heritage has been expressed through arts for years. If you look at the importance of being earnest, it's so full of gay innuendos the entire time. And our community deserve to know that these things exist. So the point of
Yeah,
this is that we'll be taking inspiration from sort of queer arts and then translating it into future art, if that makes sense. We're hoping to deliver it in partnership with some local archives, archives. So hopefully we'll be able to raid them. So we had GAG in Guildford, which was Guildford Gays, and hopefully we can get into the archives and see some of their fantastic stuff and really learn about the culture and heritage of LGBTQ plus community, and then translate that into like meaningful art that keeps our history alive and almost removes that shadow of Section 28 that so many of our communities
yeah,
grew
because
up
I
through.
mean that would have stifled art, especially, wouldn't it? I mean, during the period that that was in place.
Mm-hmm.
Are there also some efforts that you're kind of making it in terms of making it more mainstream? Working with
I think
some
so.
like more kind of mainstream. I guess like galleries and other things that are going on. I know
Yeah.
a lot of these kind of things are going on in Liverpool at the moment. There's some really interesting projects going on there. Um, and I think some of them have been working with the Tate at Liverpool Docks. So, are you planning on doing those kind of things where you maybe get some kind of artists to work on a collaborative exhibition somewhere like the Tate or something like that?
So what we're hoping to do, and I suppose hoping is a strong word because this is all down to funding,
Yeah,
and we're unfortunately begging an organization for the funding, whilst they were quite happy to fund a film by the OGB Alliance. Um, I won't name them, but anyway.
yeah,
So if we're successful, we want to do an annual art exhibition at a local a local art space, and hopefully tour that around Surrey as well. Um, we did it last year or the year before last for History Month, and it was really fantastic. But we took a lot of learning from it, and I think there's some really exciting ideas coming together. So I'm really hoping that we can do it again,
Yeah.
because beyond featuring our stories, it's a great opportunity to actually platform artists who deserve to be commissioned and paid for their work, but often aren't.
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few kind of little cafes and bars and things in Manchester in the Northern Quarter which do, like Mike nights and queer art nights and all kinds of stuff like that for the community in Manchester. Some of those are really kind of small things, but I've been to a few. They're really interesting. They're probably not very well attended, but it's like once a month there might be an event on somewhere, and it's kind of small scale, but there's a real opportunity. I know some of it's been done at Manchester Central Library. There's a few bars in the Northern Quarter. More of it as far as I'm concerned. It's like, but it feels like it needs an injection of cash. It feels like it needs to be more kind of involved with organisations like LGBT Foundation, could get involved with stuff like that. Give it more of a, kind of a broader, more funded, more accessible, setup. I don't know how they go about it, but it sounds like that's the kind of thing you're trying to do with that.
Yeah, well, raising money as a queer cause is so difficult. Last year, we supported 152 queer young adults across the year. We ran, I think it was something like 72 or 75 events in that year, which averages out to be more than one a week, on 10 grand for the entire year.
Wow.
Which is not good. Not good money.
No. So I mean, let's get onto that topic then of funding for Blossom. What are your kind of funding streams? Where do you get your funding from currently? What do you need to do?
So historically we've always just relied on grants, but that hasn't necessarily worked as well as we wanted it to do. And we know that for Blossom to grow, we need to employ people as well. So what we're really hoping to do is continue to get grants for our core work, and then use our training and consultancy packages to fund sort of the more in-depth work that we want to do, the staff that we need to deliver the work that we want to deliver. So realistically, it's going to be a long time to build that sort of customer base, I imagine, but that's kind of how we're hoping to generate the funds, is sort of the projects is what we call them. So the social group, the arts workshops, to fund those through grants, but then our core operational costs. So the CEO, marketing, someone to do our accounts, that we're hoping to raise for our training consultancy packages.
Because you're not set up as a charity as such, are you, at the moment?
So we're a community interest company, and what that means is that legally we're not for profit, and I can never take dividends from the organization, anything like that. So if whatever we make in 1 year, any profit must be reinvested as a sort of a legal element, must be reinvested back into our community.
Yeah, so work. Community interest company, is that the setup currently?
Yeah. Which basically means we can have directors that also operate within the business. So it's very similar to a limited company setup.
Yeah.
But it means that legally we're not for profit. Yeah. And if we ever folded any assets that we have to donate to another LGBT charity.
Right. So there's certain there's a bit of a framework there around what you can and can't do in terms of taxation and stuff. Okay, so we've spoken about Trans in the City quite a bit, and you're a director there as well as doing what you're doing with Blossom. So your role there is a director of mentoring schemes. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
So
let's just
relatively
chat about
new.
that a little bit, because I know the company I work for, and I'm not going to name them for obvious reasons, but um, we've been, we're involved with Trans in the City, and I think we're trying to get it funded for this year. I know the Trans in the City model has changed a little bit from last year, where it was a pay per event thing. Now it's kind of an ongoing relationship where you pay for access to the stuff that Trans in the City provides, and you benefit in other ways by sponsoring it. So yeah, interesting change, different model. So this thing you're trying to do in mentoring, how's that going to work in Trans in the City terms with companies like mine, a big engineering company? I can imagine the number of places in mentoring is quite limited. I'm just interested in understanding how that's going to work. I'll
Yeah,
let you tell us.
so we're still in the early stages of the
Yeah.
mentoring development. So my role is to basically create this scheme
Right.
from the ground. So um there there's still work to do to get it to a place where I
Yeah.
would be comfortable being like,
Mm-hmm.
here's all the juicy details. But
No, I'm not
the
expecting
main
all the details here.
but the main point of what we want to do here is to support trans and non-binary young adults who are who are in the workplace or are working in grassroots settings, to be able to create change and advocate for their needs in a way that is positive, in a way that supports their career development,
Yeah.
and in a way that creates better outcomes for all trans and non-binary people. So the scheme will work with professional-based trans and non-binary people, but
Mm-hmm.
also from grassroots, and it will kind of be a combination of um, creating change for the trans community, but also supporting them with their sort of professional development at the same time.
Yeah. So if it's focusing on younger people who might be coming into a business like ours, which is huge, I think it's very daunting and hard for young people to, if they are from the LGBTQ community, to navigate their way through, what is available for them in a company like ours, like mine. We have ERGs, which represent a lot of the different minorities that you would find in workplaces. There's one for each, I think. So, they're kind of there as employee groups run by employees on a part-time basis. And then you've also got what the company's doing in terms of its D&I inclusivity programs, such as working with Stonewall and others. But yeah, if there was something where a young person could be kind of helped, mentored, in how to navigate their career and how the business works, as an LGBTQ plus person, I think that's really useful, because even though we're supposed to be diverse and inclusive, there's still a lot of barriers, in your way if you are LGBTQ in the workplace. Even though those are going away slowly, there's still a lot of things in place which are kind of might stop you, might prevent you, might make you feel as though you're not included. So it's how to navigate all that stuff is really important.
I think you could work for the most inclusive organization imaginable.
Yeah, and still find
That's
things
somebody
that don't work.
entering the workplace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it's
And
really,
someone
I'm talking
entering
about
the
really
workplace.
simple things like, how do I change my gender marker in the HR system?
Exactly that. And, I'm thinking back to me when I first started doing work. I probably wouldn't feel comfortable asking that question, because I wouldn't want to look like a newbie that doesn't really know what they're talking about.
Yeah, and then all the
So,
kind of laws around privacy. Like,
mhm.
you're not supposed to talk about things like gender recognition certificates or out people or talk about their gender history. That's all, stuff that people just entering the workplace may not be aware of. There may not be any training given to them for those topics, because it's just not something the company talks about. The company might be following the Equality Act rules or the Gender Recognition Act rules, but I don't think they always fully understand the fact that in some cases they need to educate managers and employees on those rules, because it's very easy to fall foul of, the Gender Recognition Act rules around disclosing information about trans people. I don't think that's covered properly at all in terms of privacy. So there's lots of little things like that. And then how do you navigate your HR system and your taxation systems within HR when you're changing your details with or without a gender recognition certificate in place? There's lots of kind of little technical things like that most people will never have heard of and don't know how to navigate. I mean, I come across these kind of things all the time at work with people who are going through, transition, and they want to change the name, they want to change their gender identity. They're not sure if they can update their tax records yet because they haven't got a GRC, and we try and involve the ERG that's supposed to be dealing with this, and some of those people don't know the answers because they've not lived it themselves. The HR department doesn't really know. So to have an organisation like yours come along, or like Trans in a City, that's got experts in these areas and can talk and mentor young people, I think really useful, because they'll come in ready, prepared, and have a resource to go and talk to if they need help with certain issues.
Yeah. Exactly, and that's what we're going to do, is we're going to help them be ready to step up and say this needs doing. Yeah. And I think there's going to be amazing. It's going to be an amazing project. It's so powerful. So I really am excited.
I can think of so many things, so many areas where that's important.
Yeah. No, absolutely that.
Yeah. So I mean, is that something that's going to be ready this year, or maybe later in the year, or?
We're hoping by November, but I think it's really important that we remember everyone at Trans in the City are volunteers from the top up, top down. So I wouldn't want to give you an exact.
No. It's something that's coming up pretty soon. I'm hoping. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah, I'm quite excited about that one. Keep me posted.
Yeah, I will do. Don't you worry.
Yeah. There's so many things where if there was a resource like Trans in the City that we could, just call up and ask, even if it's Blossom, it doesn't have to be Trans in the City. I mean, it sounds like Blossom is trying to do the same kind of things. We had those relationships with those organisations where you can say, okay, what's the the best practice in this area, and how do we put that in place in the company. I mean, a really good example is there's some other work that's going on in the health insurance area where a lot of companies don't provide private health insurance, and if they do, it doesn't include trans surgeries or trans healthcare in any way. But there are some companies that are now doing that. So, and what they're finding is that they can introduce, trans healthcare, and it doesn't affect the price from the insurance companies because there's so few of us. It doesn't really affect the bottom line prices, which was a fascinating fact that I learned recently, that you can actually give people this extra cover that they really need, and it doesn't cost the company anything.
Exactly. I was working with it through Blossom. Actually, I was supporting an organisation who, well, it's not the exact same thing, but their EAP, so the Employee Assistance Program, didn't support LGBT people at all. And I was like, well, look, this one is not only cheaper, but they also provide detailed training for their mentors, for their sort of counsellors on LGBT inclusion. And it's just, it makes sense, right? And I think that expertise is invaluable, and something that you only learn by doing this sort of work. So it's impossible to expect an organisation to know it, I think.
Yeah, so it's obvious why you're working with Trans in the City, because you try and do the same things with Blossom.
With a reason, yeah.
See, it all works. It's all connected.
Yeah, I think Trans in the City and Blossom are slightly different in the sense that for Blossom, our goal is to get people into work. Whereas Trans in the City's goal
it's more to do with corporations,
create inclusive work.
Yeah. Excellent. So I think we've run out of time. We've gone over our 1 hour slot, and we've covered all the topics. So, was there anything else you wanted to?
Good for us.
Was there anything else you wanted to promote or talk about before we sign off?
I think we've done a pretty good job
Done
today.
pretty good.
So just
pretty good.
Thank you for having me.
Well, you're always welcome. You're always welcome to come on and have a chat anytime you want. If you've got something new to come and talk about, just let me know and we'll get you back on. Happy to promote.
Next week in that case.
Do our weekly podcast with Oscar.
Yeah. What stupid things is Oscar doing now?
So yeah, thanks for coming on. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
I'm not sure when this is going out, but it'll be going out soon, as it's going out as a bonus in-betweeny episode between Series 1 and Series 2. So don't forget to subscribe, don't forget to like, and thank you, Oscar, for being an amazing guest.
Thank you.
So I'll sign us off there. Bye for now.